Stop second guessing yourself. So, this is a message that I have been receiving loud and clear lately. So, I want to get on here and share because I feel like a lot of times when you have a really specific audience or people are like tapped into what you have to say, your messages, the things that you have to share with the world, they're often going through similar things to where the insight that you share could be a major turning point for them, or either something that they can utilize in their own personal situations. So, I'm discussing today the importance of trusting yourself and not second guessing yourself. I spent a lot of my life second guessing myself and my decisions, as I'm sure a lot of you may have also done the same thing when it came to even relationships, when it came to even school or education or career or connections, friends, all of those sort of things. I was always in a position of thinking that I must be wrong and the other people must be right. Because sometimes people approach you with such strong convictions in one way or another. And if you are not solidified in your own value, in your own worth, in your own purpose, in your own worthiness, people can easily knock you off your square. And then you're feeling like, well, maybe I don't feel that way. Maybe that's not that important. You've seen this probably happen sometimes when if someone gets in a relationship with someone who has a really strong personality, and the other person is a little bit more fluid or a little bit more lenient with the way that they want to live their lives and the way that they want to approach their lives, the person who has a stronger nature will probably take over and they'll go in a direction of that person. But what I've seen over time in those types of connections is that the person who allowed themselves to be kind of pushed to the side and let the other person just dictate the life that they were going to live and where they were going to go and what they were going to do, and what kind of house they would live in, what kind of cars they would drive, all this sort of thing, they eventually resent them. And I think that it's not actually resenting the person. What you're doing is resenting the fact that you were not strong enough or you didn't have enough wisdom or knowledge to understand the importance of trusting yourself and the importance of not second guessing yourself, right? When I discuss not second guessing yourself, I'm also talking about um, when you are in situations to where you have this automatic response to something that needs to be done, something that you want to take care of, something that you want to experience. And because of your older programming, because of programming that's sort of out of date, programming that sort of tries to keep you situated into an older version of yourself, you take your automatic response of, yes, I want to experience that. And then you rationalize it into a no. And we do this often when it comes to things that are going to upgrade our lives, things that are going to expand it and grow it, things that show that we feel like we're worthy of the next level of treatment from people and places and things, right? I remember being, yes, I remember being connected with someone and they had told me that they would pay for this trip that we were taking, and they paid for everything, the plane tickets, the hotel, and all of this good stuff, right? And I was like very excited about it because it was an international trip and I was gung ho about it. But at the same time, there was an unworthiness sitting deep down inside of me to where even though I had very little money at the time, I still found myself cash apping this person like $200 because there was a deep guilt that sat down inside of me that said, well, you said yes to being taken care of. You said yes to being treated well, but then there's a no there that popped up because the unworthiness is showing its face. And so we'll see these things occur a lot in our lives. We're second guessing the beauty that we've created. So while I created this amazing experience to where it was all expenses paid, dinner, breakfast, lunch, all of these things I didn't have to worry about, I still made it an issue for myself because I had a really hard time trusting my gut and trusting my instinct, and then like trusting that it was okay, right? I was still layering it with the rationalizations that I created in my mind that went right back to this smaller version of who I saw myself as being at the time. Now, at the time, it didn't feel like a smaller version of myself, but now looking back and kind of reevaluating what was happening, there was a smaller version of me that was trying to like creep in, right? And you'll find like even if you allow other people to gaslight you out of believing in yourself, or gaslight you out of trusting yourself, or trusting what it is you want to do in your life, eventually you turn to the space of resentment. And what we do a lot is turn it outwardly, and we start to resent the people around us and say they held us back. They, talked me out of my dreams. They talked me out of doing what I wanted to do. When really you talked yourself out of it. You allowed yourself to be put on the back burner because you didn't trust your gut. You didn't trust yourself. You were like, maybe these other people know what's better for me than what I know for myself, right? And maybe that's true when you're like 13 years old, when you're like 10 years old, and when you're 5 years old. But when you become an adult, you have to be willing to fall flat on your face with the decisions that you've made for your life. You have to be willing to say, even if I make a decision that doesn't seem like it's working out, it doesn't seem like it was the best idea, I'm willing to fall flat on my face to figure that out. And I can look back at many times in my 20s to where people around me were telling me certain things, but at the end of the day, I was hell bent on trusting that this is the direction that I was supposed to go into when it came to how I wanted my life to play out. Now, there are some other instances that are not necessarily trusting your gut. They're built-in resistance. And I talk about this a lot. And I'm going to be talking about this stuff more because I find myself with these videos, I'm trusting my gut with this, that I want to have more of conversations, and especially higher level conversations related to the deeper experiences of life and how we navigate those things, how we take these quantum leaps from one era of our lives to the next, and what that might mean overall. Sometimes I try to keep my videos curated and outlined perfectly and beginning, middle, end. And I do a really good job at it. And I have my little intro that I say, and then I say what the subject is going to be. Then I talk about all the reasons why it affects us and then how to counteract it. And then thank you for watching, right? But what I like to do more now of is have conversations about these deeper occurrences that are truly stopping us from experiencing the greatness that we want to experience. And so when we are in these spaces sometimes, and I'll go back to what I was previously saying, we create resistance that's not necessarily trusting our gut and our intuition. That resistance is just to combat what other people are pushing at us. So if someone says, this is not trusting yourself, this example, if someone says go left and you're like, no, I'm going right. You're going right just because they told you to go left. If we step back a little bit further and we go deeper into alignment and who we are, and we're patient with ourselves, then whether or not this person says left or right won't even make a difference. If it happens to be left, then you're going to go left, and you're not going to even think about whether this person was like, see, I told you to go left and it all worked out, because at the end of the day, you were trusting yourself. And what happens is, with sometimes in these situations, you'll find that when people can't take ownership or something over your choices, when they can't say that they had a major influence with them, then they try to either ignore it or downplay your decision making. I've had people literally tell me in the past, many times before, that they helped me make certain decisions that they never really helped me make a decision with. They didn't realize that I was steeped into my own intuition, that I was steeped into my own connection to the universe, my own connection to source energy, and that I didn't really need anybody to come and save me or tell me what needs to be done next. I felt what needed to be done next. And just because what they said was in alignment with that, they felt like they were in charge of my decision, like they somehow navigated my decision. I remember when I made a very hard decision back in the day. I was going through a divorce, and one of my family members wanted to come stay with me, and I didn't have the bandwidth for it because I know who I am and I know how I was feeling. It was like one of the worst and most strenuous experiences I'd ever been in my life. And the last thing I wanted to do was live with a family member. So when I finally found a place to live, they automatically just started moving their things over there. And I was like, I'm sorry, this is very hard for me to do, because it was very hard for me to stand up to my siblings at that time when I was younger, when I was like in my 20s, early 30s and stuff. It was very hard for me to stand on my square and say, this is not what I want. And that was one of the first times that I did that, right? And I still think to this day, this person is bitter with me about that, but that's neither here nor there. But I'm sure about that. But it was not something that I had the capacity or the bandwidth for. And we have to do that, because then if we don't, it turns into mental illness. It turns into physical illness. And people will sit by and watch this happen to you and try to nurse you back to health when they're the cause and the cure at the same time, right? You know, them not being there is also the cure. And so I was sitting in this space of doing this, and I was talking to another family member about it, and we were just talking through it. And this person could have sworn they're the one that gave me the backbone to tell the truth. And I'm like, you don't have the ability to do that. And so sometimes when other people think that they're giving insight to you, they're not, because you are so clearly steeped into what you know is best for you. Other people don't have the ability to know what's best for you. There's no blueprint out there for the best version of who you want to be. There's no blueprint out there for the purpose that you, in particular, as an individual, as the way that you show up, is out there already. So even when we get mentors and we are, you know, following their every word that they say, and we're listening to everything that they have to share, and we're just like, oh, this person is so wise. They understand life. They know what moves to make. They don't know what moves to make for you. They're not sure what best decisions to be made for you, because we all come in here with this, you know, genetic imprint, this DNA already. We are products of our ancestors, our family lines. So like, you'll see people deal with the same stuff generationally. Some of it is taught, and some of it just seeped right on through that programming, right? And so we go through these stages. You can't possibly know what this person over here is coming from. It's not even possible. And then that, coupled with whatever experiences they had with their parents, the people that cared for them, with the school environments they were in, the connections that they made, and how that impacted and molded and shaped them and brought them to you at 40 years old. There's no way you can look at them and say, yes, girl, leave that husband. That is not your business. That's not something that we have insight into, right? So the person that's in that situation can say, this is time. It's time for me to do this. This is what's most important to focus on right now. This is what's most important for me to do right now. We have to learn more to believe in ourselves as our own personal heroes, because looking outside and looking for other people to validate us and tell us where we should go next and what we should do next is only going to bring us to a space that's not authentic to who we are. And what we all want more than anything, even if we can't articulate this to a degree, is to be more of who we are authentically. If we could be more of who we are authentically, life would be so much more enriched. It would be so much more expansive. We would glow everywhere we went. We would be happy. We would always have something to offer. We'd always have something to share. We would never feel depleted, because we're just existing as we are. We're not shuffling this version of ourselves over here. We're not pretending like we don't have this desire. We're not acting like we like this person and we can't stand them. We're not sitting there, you know, steeped into believing in things that we know aren't true, sitting in deep religious dogmatic practices that we know don't really resonate with us, but you know, this is what they said we should do. We're not sitting there doing that. We can be a clear, clean vessel of love and of appreciation, of giving, of harmony with the universe, harmony with our environments that we're living in, right? So this entire message is based on stop second guessing yourself, get in alignment, become a mentor to yourself almost, and see what feels the way it's supposed to feel. And the more you practice making decisions on your own, making decisions without having to put them through this person over here, put them through that person over there. Because I used to do that. I'm the youngest of a lot of people, six kids. I used to run every decision I made through everybody around me for everything. But what I realized when I got to a place in my life, and it probably was like right after being divorced, right after having 2 small children, didn't even know I was going to be a person to have children, right? right after being in that phase of my life, I was like, not trusting my intuition and not trusting my gut has got me to here. It's not that I was in a bad place, but I was in a place where I didn't like a lot of the elements that was inside of that environment. And I look back at the things where I trusted my own gut. I trusted my own intuition. I trusted my own, personal belief systems and the highest version of myself. And those things I loved. I loved that I had went to school and got certain degrees. I loved that I had learned to live on my own and do a whole bunch of things and have a joyful life in my 20s instead of having kids. I love that I had gotten rid of certain friendships and then curated new types of friendships. So there were certain things that I was tapped into, that I traveled to different places and I'd done things on my own, certain things that I was tapped into. But taking so much information and advice from others, it kind of put me in a space where I was in a mindset of being centered around relationships all the time. A lot of the young people call it male centered if you're a woman, right? Centered around relationships all the time. It was always like, what do men want? What are they thinking? What do they like? Even like the last time my mom visited me more recently this past summer before, we were talking about weight and she was like, well, they say men like curvy women. I was like, what do I care about that for? And I was thinking about those messages that had been so embedded so deeply. It was like, don't trust yourself. Think about what everybody else needs from you. Think about, put male attention on a pedestal, put relationships on a pedestal, put these friendships and connections on a pedestal, put family before everything, even when environments are toxic, on a pedestal. And so when we learn that these are not the things that feed our soul, these are not the things that give us the life and the experiences that we want to have, we come back to the space of, I think I'm going to trust myself this time. I think I'm going to look at the inherent intelligence that's placed inside of me and inside of everyone. And I'm going to tap into that. I'm going to tap into the source energy. I'm going to get in alignment. I'm going to get back to the truest version, the most authentic version of myself. And I'm going to make my decisions from there. I'm going to make my decisions from that space. And I always say this, even if we want to talk about more simple things. My daughter was talking about some event that she was on the fence about going to, not going to. Some friend that's been more like a friend of me because I'm a grown woman. I got a lot of wisdom. I'm like, girl, that girl is a friend of me. But she's still figuring that out and it's perfectly fine. And she was like, should I go? Shouldn't I? And she wound up going to this event and she was just like, I should have trusted my gut and not going because it was just not it. And she was like, she had an auntie there who was drunk. It was just not fun. It wasn't enjoyable in any kind of way. There was no good pictures to take. It was so many things that she said wasn't right. And she said the energy was just off. And I was like, well, next time you'll know, your first gut, your first intuition said to you that you weren't going to enjoy yourself and you didn't want to go. But you let a friend who felt guilty about not showing up, which is never an energy you should be operating in, convince you that you should go to this event. Even simple things like that. I don't try to convince myself to do things anymore. Either I want to do it or I don't. And when you get in alignment and you get very clear with yourself, it's going to be so easy to see what you need to say yes to and the things that you need to say no to. I even use this with my daughter when she's like, can I use the car to go do this or whatever? She doesn't ask very much because she doesn't like driving. She has friends that drive. She'll wait for a ride any day. She doesn't really like driving. But she's like, can I use the car to go get some, fast food or something she was asking for? And I use my intuition for that, my gut. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Some other day she asked me for something. I'm like, nah, that's okay. Not today. And she goes, okay. And when I'm tapped in like that, they don't even push back because they know how I operate. I don't operate in this petty space of, no, I'm just saying no to say no. It's because something about it is not right and it's okay. We can go do something else later, right? Trust yourself. You don't need anybody to come save you. You don't need anybody to come make you anything more than what you already are. I'm a firm believer that you were given everything you needed from the moment you got here on this earth. But unfortunately, we go through these people, places, and things that strip away at us and gets us in a place where we're second guessing ourselves all the time. Sometimes we know what decisions need to be made, but because we're so caught up on what we don't want that outcome to be, or we have this attachment to a certain way that we look, or a certain lifestyle, or a certain connection, we refuse to make that decision. So we start falling into all these spaces, asking people questions, going to therapy, getting information from here, there, and everywhere, when really, trust in yourself, you already know what needs to be done. I always tell people, if you're questioning whether somebody is a good friend or a good person to have around, whether they're a certain quality or a certain level, whether they're honest or true to you, it's probably leaning to the side to where they're not. And that's okay. And the reason why is because I have people around me that I've never questioned the motives of. I've never questioned the energy of. I've never questioned the feedback from. I've never questioned any of those things because I've never had any energetic reasons to, nor have I had any tangible reasons to. Sometimes we just don't want to face what we're dealing with, and we don't want to face what it means. So trust yourself. Trust that infinite intelligence that was placed in you through source energy. Trust that that is there. Nobody has more access to that than you do for yourself and for your own authentic experience. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.